Awesome. Well, good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. It's, Steve Check, Taylor McGuire here from Empyrean Technologies, where we ask you to entrust us to manage your cybersecurity landscape and your IT infrastructure so you can work on managing your business. This is the first of our 2023 webinar series, where our plans over the next months are to discuss various topics to help you make good decisions with both running your business and managing your infrastructure. If you've missed out on any of our previous webinars, there are recordings available on our website, www.empyrean.net/webinars. I hope there's some good content there for you from our last series. As we kick off the new year, there's just seems to be never-ending a lot of news about cybersecurity. We see a lot of news of organizations of all size being compromised. We know cyber insurers continue to increase the requirements are passing along to business owners. And we see that the bad guys have certainly not relented in their tactics, and probably they're not going to. So as their methods evolve, we too need to evolve our methods in being proactive on those attacks. So the good news is here that many providers of cyber protection are continuing to innovate, and that's what we are going to talk about today. So what do we do? That's the topic. Taylor, I'll allow you to introduce our guests. We'll dig in for about 30 minutes, and if you have some questions, I encourage you to put the questions in the Q&A. We'll attempt to answer them, and if we don't get to them, we will provide answers via email, and this presentation is also being recorded, so we can make that available to you well. So Taylor, take it away.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'd just like to introduce our friends over at Sophos, who we've been working with for a number of years to help deliver cybersecurity products and services. We've got Brandon Whip and Mark Yap from Sophos joining us. So a couple of quick housekeeping items. We do have some upcoming webinars, which we will be sending out in some mail outs and some more information on the dates and times. But basically, we're going to be talking a bit more about cyber insurance with an actual cyber insurance company. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about moving to the cloud with Microsoft Azure, and a relatively new partner of ours named Verkada, talking about physical security, alarm systems, cameras, and things like that. So that's what the next couple of months will look like as far as webinars go. And there is a prize draw at the end of this for people who attend, $250 Amazon gift card. So I'll announce the winner at the end of that. So I will pass it over to Brandon and Mark.
Awesome. Thanks, Taylor. I will share my screen in 1 second here. Perfect. All right. Can everybody see the Imperium threat landscape there?
Yeah.
Perfect. So thanks for having us. Imperium, they're one of our fantastic partners all across Canada, actually, to be honest with you. And my name is Brandon Whip. I'm part of the channel team across Sophos Canada here, and then along with Mark, who's part of the MSP program, so the managed service providers here. And today we're just going to talk a little bit more about the threat landscape. I know a lot of you are entrepreneurs, you're business owners, and you rely heavily on Imperium to be their trusted advisors, and we assist and help out with that in whichever capacity we can through it. And we do know the focus of your day-to-day task doesn't want to be kind of convoluted to the minutia of security. You have way better things to be worrying about, and that's why you've entrusted Imperium and Sophos to be able to offload a lot of that. And today we want to give you a bit of a background on what's going on with the world, how everything changes, and a little bit more about what Sophos and Imperium are doing to help prevent that curve going forward on that. Now, as we get going, for those of you who don't know who Sophos actually is, we're a global company. We've been around since 1985. We've got over 500,000 customers worldwide, and that's just customers, not alone the actual end users themselves. For a lot of the conversation today is going to be around our managed detection and response, so our MDR offering, and we are the fastest growing MDR provider on the planet. We've got over 14,000. The number might even be further up on the list. I know this was taken a couple weeks ago as well too. We've been on the Gartner Magic Quadrant, which is a third-party reviewer from not only internal sources, but also from customer reviews. And this is where we've definitely been able to provide a lot of value and extra service from that side. So again, we know security, we're a security first company, and that's where we want to drive it forward too. Now, you cannot turn on the news without hearing some sort of cyber attack. And even we were talking with Taylor and Steve just before this about 3 or 4 new ones that have come out in the last couple of days about these big massive attacks with, I'm sure you've heard of Uber, I mean Rockstar, the gaming company, not the energy drink, seems to be hit every now and then. KFC just got hit a couple days ago as well too, so that whole franchise and into the billions on that side. So there's a lot of things going on that you just hear on a day-to-day issue. And now this is where you think, hey, we're in Canada, nobody really thinks of us in that capacity, but at the end of the day, that's very far from the truth. And this is where, as cybersecurity experts, we deal with this on a day-to-day business. And especially not only it's not as kind of big, it's not as fancy as some of these other ones that are getting hit with these multi-million-dollar ransomware attacks, but this is where it's these small businesses, medium businesses that don't quite get the headlines that we actually talk to on a day-to-day business. And so that's where you really need to think of the capacity that, hey, you know what, if this 10 user shop or even 50 user shop, if they're down for one day, even that ransomware attacker is trying to get $10,000, $20,000. You do that 10 times, 20 times, that's a pretty good number for a year, opposed to these multi-million-dollar ones, right? And this is where we want to come in and educate our customers, our partners about how we can actually help and effectively protect you against those bad guys. And it's not the fact that we're having, hey, we want to have good security, we want to have the best security moving forward. And so as a business owner as well too, you want to make sure that you are sleeping at night. You're not having to worry about getting a call midnight, holidays, weekends about, hey, what's happening, what's going on, we can't get back into our systems. And even thinking about the downtime if something were to happen on that side, where if your company was out of commission for one day, out of 2 days, maybe even a week, what would that look like from a business perspective, affecting yourself, your employees, and even your customers from that side? So this is where we definitely want to drive in and help a little bit further. Now, cybersecurity is beyond complex. I will be the first one to admit it. It changes every day. And even as a trusted expert as well to it, we have to learn things every single day, what's happening, what's advancing. And it's not just whereas 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it's, hey, we've got our Norton antivirus on our home desktop and we're secured, or we've got our Norton. It's now, okay, things have changed so much and it's rapidly changing even faster that it's not just that let's set this, let's forget this and move on with our day. You need a constant person looking at things, making sure the system is safe and making sure that it is reliable, that nothing will actually happen moving forward. And now I'm not going to go on to these quotes, but it's just talking about how complex and how difficult it is to stay on top of it. And that's where we want to be able to assist and help out from it. Now, when we look at some average statistics, and again, I won't PowerPoint you to death with numbers here on this, but it's something just to kind of take an overall approach, because we did what was called our state of ransomware back in 2022, and we'll have another one coming out 2023 here in the next few months anyways. But it's just showing you the different stats of what actually happens and what this looks like for businesses that are getting hit. They're either getting targeted or what's going on that side. And the biggest one I wanted to point out here, in a lot of the small to medium businesses, it took over a month once they were hit and affected to get back up to 100% working order. Now, that's not to say that the whole system is down, but it may be now all of a sudden you've got, maybe you do have some people that are in the IT management side that are working on this, and they have to push through more and more to be able to get this done. And this is now just taking extra time out of their day to deal with something that could have been avoidable moving forward. And that's where we want to just educate you on what we can do with Imperium to help assist that. Now, I'm going to pass this over to Mark, and he's going to jump into a little bit more of the service and how we can help on that front.
All right, thank you so much, Brandon. And Imperium, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to talk about Sophos MDR. So I think, Brandon, you did a really good job by giving us a very high-level overview of the threats that we're seeing in the news. They are a lot of big companies. I think you also did a really good job with saying, you know what we see on the news, it's 0.01% of these cyber attacks that we actually detect out there that we know about. Brandon and I, along with our partners, we get on the phone every single day with customers, partners, our incident response team, and we hear the stories of a lot of SMB customers being hit by cyber attacks, big and small. The point is that cyber threats are definitely accelerating in volume and sophistication. But the unique thing that we're seeing and the unique trend is that we're seeing it go downstream. The bad guys realize, let's not go after the Fortune 500 companies. Let's not go after the large enterprises. They have a very sophisticated cybersecurity practice. They're going to have amazing cyber insurance. They're just going to be harder to deal with. Let's go after the small to medium business size, the SMBs, because they're more likely to pay. They're not going to have as many boots on the ground, and their security is probably not as good as some of these large enterprises that have a full-blown security operations center. And it's very true. When you think about, so I always give this analogy. If you're a bank robber, are you going to be trying to rob the Federal Reserve or a large bank in the middle of downtown New York? Or are you going to be trying to target a small credit union on Vancouver Island or in a small town where there's not necessarily as much law enforcement and it's just less security, right? So think about that analogy. And I actually saw a documentary on CBC that talked about that, and it was very, very interesting. Cybersecurity tools are great. I'm wearing my Intercept X hat, but we all know that cyber threats are becoming more sophisticated. The bad guys are becoming more sophisticated. And quite frankly, a lot of our end customers buy a lot of tools. They don't necessarily know how to maximize these tools. There's so many different ones. What's EDR, XDR, MDR? There's so many different tools out there that customers try to stitch together. I've been at Sophos for quite a number of years, and one big trend that from what I'm seeing is that end customers are saying these tools are great, but we want to consume cybersecurity as more of a service through our managed service providers and through their partners, because we don't have the people, we don't have the process, and we're not maximizing our technology, even if we did make these investments. The last point there, hiring and retaining cybersecurity experts, it's pretty difficult. And we'll attest to that because we're always trying to find talent at Sophos. Sophos, I believe, has a good incentive to onboard security engineers, but even for us, a larger company, it's difficult. I have a good story to tell about this. The White House had a summit around cybersecurity and just a shortage of talent. They recognize that, hey, there's not enough cybersecurity experts out there today. What about 5 or 10 years from now? How are we going to have enough people to protect our environments, our businesses, our public sectors? So Sophos was actually there at the White House, and we were nicely represented. And one of the solutions that they came up with, and Brandon, cue next slide, please. So one of the solutions is to have cybersecurity delivered as a service versus being drowned in different tools. When cybersecurity is delivered and consumed as a service, it's the perfect marriage between the 3 items you see in that Venn diagram: people, technology, and process. Most organizations, especially SMB ones, they're going to have some technology, they're going to have some people, but these people are not dedicated 24/7 to their security. And then in terms of process, that's where a lot of companies fall short. The question I always ask, hey, if there's a cyber incident, if your servers are encrypted, if you have a ransomware attack on Christmas Day or Thanksgiving or 2 a.m. in the morning, what is your process? Do you have somebody that you can call? Do you have a full-blown incident response team that's ready to respond? And 99% of SMB customers simply won't have all 3 of those, especially with the process. And that's where we can help here in conjunction with Empyreon. We can have a security operations center instantly out of a box. It builds right on top of our Intercept X endpoint and server agent. It's 24/7. So somebody asked me on a call earlier, is your SOC team going to be helping us out just after hours? And I said, no, we don't have a differentiation between after hours and during business hours. We're always there to help. Ours is human-led. So we're not going to be just monitoring environments and then letting our customers know, hey, there's some servers being rapidly encrypted. These are some of the steps that you should take. We'll take those steps for you in conjunction with your partner. No matter what, we're here to help achieve cybersecurity outcomes. And a couple key outcomes is, let's make security as simple as possible. Let's make it as easy to use. And we need to have it 24/7. It's not a 8 to 5 sort of job, right? And one thing I will share is that a lot of the bad guys know that. A lot of the big high profile breaches you see out there, and even the small ones that we hear about all the time here at Sophos, they not coincidentally happen before a long weekend overnight, because they know that the companies are not fully staffed. I was on an incident response call earlier this week. Smaller company here in Vancouver, 100 users, 30 servers, manufacturing. They're not a Sophos customer, but they reached out to us for help. They believe they have malicious activity in their environment for over a month, and the bad guys were just observing. Finally, they encrypted all their servers last Monday. So for a whole week, they haven't been able to do anything. They've called Sophos with our rapid response service for us to help. Now with our MDR, our incident response is included. We are monitoring 24/7. So if this type of incident should happen and we have customers on our MDR, we're going to be responding immediately 24/7. Next slide, please, Brandon. Our MDR service is huge. Like Brandon mentioned earlier, we are the largest MDR provider in the world. We have 14,000 plus unique customers on our MDR today, which is absolutely amazing. Part of this is because of the effectiveness and how quickly we can respond. You can see the effectiveness there is really, really good for industry standards. And one thing that really sets us apart is the time it takes us to detect, investigate, and respond. Among the industry, this is extremely quick. If anybody has dealt with any malicious activity, any ransomware attack, any encryption of servers, or anything bad in general, you know that every single minute, every hour is absolutely vital. And we pride ourselves with responding immediately, very, very quickly, and remediating it as well. So Brandon, next slide. So when you think about what we're doing with MDR, it's really similar, and I threw this slide together because I know a lot of us can relate. It's very similar to what we're seeing with a traditional data center and how a lot of end customers and partners and companies in general, they went down the road of, hey, let's build our own data centers, let's maintain our own servers. And then they realized that's pretty complex. It's not very flexible. We also need some experts to maintain these servers. We need the infrastructure, we need the building, we need the technology, the people, the process, right? Same with MDR. So with the advent of infrastructure as a service, like with AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, we're seeing a lot of these companies essentially ditch, hey, let's adopt infrastructure as a service and put our stuff in the cloud versus us building and maintaining our own data center. So the same thing is happening today with cybersecurity. Like we mentioned, it's moving too fast, it's way too complicated. And quite frankly, it's very hard to have the people to build your own security operations center. Instead of building your own security operations center, just having a 24/7 coverage at your company is difficult enough. Instead of doing that, you can essentially consume cybersecurity as a service, just like how you consume infrastructure in the cloud as a service. So think about this analogy when you think about what we're doing with managed detection and response. Next slide, please. So why is it important for small businesses? We already mentioned this earlier. It's not just the big logos that you saw on the screen. The reason why we have the big logos, they're typically, they have to disclose those big breaches, right? We could use those logos because they're public facing. Brandon and I cannot talk about any of the breaches that we see with the SMB customers that we hear about on a daily basis. The number that scares me the most on this slide is the 51 days. Like I mentioned earlier, I had a good example of a customer that had the attackers monitoring their environment for a whole month. 51 days is the average time attackers remain undetected with small businesses. A lot of companies think the bad guys are going to go in there, encrypt all the files immediately. They're going to deploy the ransomware or cause the damage right away, steal the information. In fact, what they do is they monitor for quite some time so that their attack could be as effective as possible. We do a very good job with detecting this. When we detect any anomalies, any connections to command and control servers, we're going to be there and we're going to kick out the bad guys right away. They're not even going to have time to observe in your environment. Small businesses are being targeted more and more. Technology alone is not enough, like we talked about. We need, again, people, process, technology, the perfect blend of all three. And it's becoming harder and harder to have the perfect blend of all three. And that's where we're seeing this being consumed more as a service. It's a 24/7 job. It's not a analyst or an IT director who has many, many different hats, and then they maybe dedicate security an hour a day. That's simply not the case. The bad guys don't work like that. The good guys can't work like that as well. And we need to have more telemetry. Security needs to have a perfect blend between different layers as well. And it's a good transition to this slide, Brandon. We're the perfect blend of the best of both worlds. When you think about MDR or cybersecurity as a service solutions out there today, there's two main types. There's bring your own technology. These are much more complicated, but the benefit is they can ingest data from pretty much any layer of security, whether it's endpoint, server, firewall, mobile devices, email, you name it. There's the single vendor MDRs that build their MDR or their SOC team on top of their endpoint and server agent. Sophos fell into the single vendor MDR category for the past 3 years, and if you can click on the slide there, Brandon, we just released our new MDR service that blends the best of both worlds. We're a single vendor MDR that can respond extremely quickly, that's built on top of our own AV stack, but we can also ingest data from third-party security solutions now as well, which is really, really cool. When we have more data and telemetry, we can protect your environment better, right? Because we can correlate all the telemetry, all the threat intelligence that we see in your entire environment and from the environment of our other MDR customers as well. Next slide, please. This is a really busy slide. Definitely need a magnifying glass to even read some of the text here, but it's just a depiction of all the different layers of security Sophos offers and our strategy. Our strategy is to make sure that our security products are working together. But we do understand that sometimes you have security products outside of Sophos that you can't switch. And that's why with our MDR, we're able to ingest telemetry, threat intelligence, and data into our data lake. And our SOC team, our security operations team, can use that data in our threat hunting. And in the event of an incident, they can use that information as well to respond to threats. So this is a very busy slide. We have a lot of products here at Sophos. We're not saying move everything to Sophos, but what we are saying is as you add more layers of security, it's very important to think about the fact that these layers of security should speak to one another. They should share threat intelligence, and they absolutely should not work in isolation because it's a lot less effective. Next slide, please. So some of the integrations that we have here at Sophos with our new MDR, and I'm going to fly through these slides just with the interest of time. We, of course, do integrate with our own products, like our firewall, like our cloud, our email security, for example, and our network detection and response. We have extended out the integrations at no cost with Microsoft, as well as third-party security protections, and we've increased our data retention. Now, the very exciting news here at Sophos is that, next slide, please, we've extended out our integrations and the ability for us to ingest telemetry from other third-party sources. And here are some of the logos that you see on the screen. This is not an inclusive list. We have quite a bit more, and you'll find it on our website. We also do have the ability to increase our data retention to 1 year for compliance reasons, for cyber insurance reasons. Many companies have been asking for this, and we do have that ability now as an additional license. You can increase your data retention as well with your endpoint and server security with Sophos. So last few slides here, I just wanted to touch really quickly on how the bad guys work. The bad guys work sort of how we work. They use artificial intelligence. They use automated tools to try to get a foothold into an environment. Once they get a foothold into an environment, they'll use the real live hackers to cause damage, exfiltrate the data, encrypt the servers, observe your environment, actually do the damage. We work the same way. We have our automated tools with Sophos Central, InterceptX, our XDR tools. But again, tools are not enough. When we detect malicious activity, when we detect any anomalies, we have hands-on keyboard, which means we have live human beings, over 500 individuals in our security operations team here at Sophos, who will be behind the keyboard 24/7, responding to any threats when we need to. So a lot of people think the bad guys need to be extremely sophisticated, and they are. They're getting a lot better. But the scariest part about the cyber threats these days is that we have a lot of more amateur hackers and amateur cyber threat actors that are using malicious code. So Brandon, if you go to the next slide, I threw together this example. So on our end, cybersecurity as a service, you're consuming a security operations center as a service with Sophos with our MDR. The bad guys are doing the same. I watched a documentary on CBC again about a cyber criminal from Gatineau, Quebec, who's now in prison in Florida. He was not a very sophisticated hacker, but he joined the NetWalker ransomware gang, and he was able to get ransomware as a service. He essentially bought this ransomware as a service as part of this group, deployed it out, made millions and millions of dollars in ransomware payments, and then paid part of that to the ransomware group. So now we're seeing a lot of amateur hackers actually buy malicious code, inject it, and they're not developing it themselves. So we're seeing this spread across the board, and that's why we're seeing so much more cyber threats today than what we saw years ago. Because just like how you can consume cybersecurity as a service, the bad guys are doing exactly the same with their malicious software. Next slide, please.
And on top of that, Mark,
Mhm.
there's actually a lot of discussion around how AI is being used, like ChatGPT, which some of you may have heard about in the news, is actually being used to write code for junior developers or people who don't have much experience in this area. The AI is writing viruses and writing malicious code like this for people. So it's getting quite interesting out there. I think I also heard today the Catholic school district or something in Ontario paid like $300,000 in a ransomware payment this month or something. So it's still happening on a regular basis. So
I did see that as well. There's definitely a lot that make it in the news, a lot that don't. The Vancouver Film School was down as well here in Vancouver, but definitely a lot. And that Chat GPT, a lot of people, think, hey, there's the students are going to be able to write essays without, really doing their own research. Well, hey, the bad guys are also using it to automate their malicious code as well. So that's a really good point you brought up there. Brandon, next slide, please. So flying through these really quickly, just with the interest of time, we try to offload a lot of this off of your plate, off the plates of your partners as well, in conjunction with them. We don't just notify you. We don't give you playbooks on how to respond to threats. We'll at least collaborate with you, but there's no price difference between collaborate, and authorize. If we detect something, if you chosen authorize, if there's something malicious in the middle of the night, Sophos will go in there. We'll contain the threat. We're going to provide full incident response on your behalf, and we have really, really good reporting that gives you information across everything that we've done in your environment as well. Next slide, Brandon. Some of the benefits of Sophos MDR for small businesses. We've probably covered most of this here already, but I'll just highlight one. And one of them is that you can sleep better at night. You can work on your business, you can grow your business, and not worry about, hey, am I doing enough for cybersecurity? Are the bad guys in my environment observing? And then if there is an incident, one of the worst parts about anything bad, including a cyber incident, is not knowing who to call, right? Essentially, if there's an emergency, you call 911. I hear all the time from end customers that when there's a malicious activity, it causes so much stress, so much turmoil, internal conflict when something should happen, that it's simply not worth it. They need somebody to call, and that's when Empyrean and Sophos comes in. But the thing is, you likely won't have to call us if you have this service, because we're going to be monitoring and providing that full blanket security, and we're going to be there to provide the incident response. And we're typically going to let you know and provide you with a reporting if something should happen. Next slide, Brandon. And finally, how do we rank here? So there's so many testing houses out there, but I always just share this one, because the Gartner Peer Insights, they're actually reviews and ratings by our paid customers and our paying customers and our paying partners. They're not rated by any professional third-party testing houses. Everybody who rates the Sophos MDR service, so 4.8 out of 5, are actual customers who have used our service, who spend their own money and invest in our security. So I won't drill down into this, but if you do visit Gartner Peer Insights, you'll see how we stack against some of the other vendors. And we have a lot of reviews, and you'll be able to read the reviews as well in terms of how we've helped companies respond to their threats and just what's included with our MDR service. And that's pretty much it for me. I've used up most of the time. And Steve, I'll pass it back to you for some closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. That's very enlightening. And I just wanted to maybe address one little thing for our customer base. Not all of our customers have adopted the MDR platform yet. It does represent a small upgrade to their current service for a lot of them. So just really put it out there. If this has piqued your interest, I know there has been some conversations with some of you probably already, but where Taylor and I are both available to answer whatever questions you might have about what this might look like for your organization. And if you happen to be on the call and you're not an Empyrean customer, we're still happy to answer your questions, help you adopt maybe a more secure cyber policy within your organization. Appreciate you guys taking the time, Brandon, Mark, and Taylor. I think, what are the next steps here?
Yeah, well, one thing I actually just wanted to add here as well is earlier on, Brandon had mentioned that in some cases it takes up to a month to recover from a cyber attack. And that's actually not just dictated by the fact that it takes that long to recover, but we've actually seen instances where, for example, we were engaged by a company based out of Montreal to help us do some cybersecurity recovery services after they got encrypted for their branch out here in the Langley area. And so we had to work with the cyber insurance provider's requirements and all the steps that they wanted to take, because they have a process to make a cyber insurance claim. They want to know how it got on there, what happened, why it happened. They want us to follow a very specific process. So in some cases, even though Empyrean might be able to get you up and running really quickly, the cyber insurance claim and the insurance company might require you to go through a longer process, which is not something maybe we would do to get you up and running, but it's what they would require for you to be able to make that claim. So to be able to make the claim, you could actually experience further downtime. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind, understand as to maybe why some of these, why some of the downtime can be upwards of about a month.
Yeah. And I think in that particular instance, if I'm not mistaken, we're probably well into about 3 months and helping them from time to time still mitigate that. So they're still mitigating this thing after, I think it's close to 3 months already.
Yeah, there's different pieces of that for sure. But yeah, so then final thoughts basically for us is, we'll work to engage with some of you over the next couple of weeks here, and looking forward to having those conversations with you. The other thing, we did commit to a prize draw. So Lori, you have won $250 gift card. So we'll be sure to get that over to you here in the next couple of days. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you all have a great week, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Yeah.